Hello everyone. Today I will recap you a movie titled Phone Booth. So make some tea and we'll start. The film begins with a voiceover monologue that tells about telephone machines in New York and that their era ends. One of these booths will be the objects of the film, and the main character will be the person who will visit it last. The main character Stuart Shepard works as an advertising agent. Stu walks down the street and solves business issues. On the way, he meets the restaurant owner, who says that Stu owes him. Stu promises him to have a new rap star party at his restaurant. Stu enters the phone booth and takes off his wedding ring. A pizza delivery man approaches him and says that a gentleman should get pizza in a phone booth at this address. Stu doesn't take pizza. He calls a girl named Pam, whom he works with, and asks for a meeting. She says she's busy. Stu hangs up and the phone starts ringing. Stu answers and the voice on the other end of the wire says someone who sent pizza, which Stu refused. The voice says he's watching Stu and sees him now. Stu wants to hang up, but his voice doesn't let him. The voice says he'll call his wife Stu named Kelly and hangs up. After a while, the phone rings again. The voice rings Pam and tells him that Stu is lying to Pam and that he has a wife. Stu hears all this conversation. The voice asks Stu to call his wife and tell him what he's cheating on her. At this time, a girl of easy virtue approaches the booth and asks Stu to let her in, because she needs to make a call. They have a conflict and the girl hits the door of the booth with her hand. Stu calls his wife, because the voice says that if Stu doesn't call, he'll call himself. The wife tells Stu that some strange man called her and said that Stu would call her from the phone booth to tell her something important. Stu tells Kelly not to believe that person if he calls and says anything. At this time, a girl of easy virtue brought her friend and they knock on the booth together and demand that Stu come out. Stu yelled at them and drove them away. The voice says that if Stu hangs up, he will die. The voice says he has a rifle, and he sees Stu right through her scope. Stu says if he gets shot, the police will come here right away and find the shooter. The voice says that nothing like this will happen, and in confirmation of his words shoots at a toy robot standing next to the stand. Stu looks at the windows of high-rise buildings, but there are too many of them to notice the shooter. A man approaches the booth, who covers the girls and demands that Stu come out. Stu gave him money so he wouldn't get in the way. The man takes a bat and breaks the glass of the booth. He tries to pull Stu out of the booth, and at this time a voice says that he can save Stu from this problem, and Stu notices the man's look. Stu says yes, and the aggressor drops dead. There is a panic on the street, and people are saying that the police will arrive soon. The girls think that Stu killed the man. He tries to say that he doesn't have a gun, but no one believes him. Stu's trying to figure out who he's talking to. This man says he's not from Stu's circle. Stu dials 911 and talks to the voice, trying to hint that he is in danger. The dispatcher ignores the call. The person on the other end of the line finds out that he dialed 911 and shoots him in the tip of the ear. Stu realizes that there is a bug in the booth. Soon the police arrive and demand that the man come out of the booth and raise his hands, but the voice asks him to stay inside. He also reminds that he can kill Stu at any moment, and it will take the police at least a day to realize that they did not do it themselves. The voice tells Stu not to give it away. The police ask Stu to get out of the booth again, but he says he can't do it because he has an important call. According to police, Stu shot the man and returned to the booth to make a call. The police find it strange. At the same time, the police cannot shoot at a person who does not commit aggressive actions. Voice says that thousands of people die every day, but once the corpse lies in the city center and they all go crazy. From a man's story, you might think that he fought in Vietnam, and Stu tries to calm him down by offering to make him famous. But the voice immediately breaks him off, and says that he is not 50 at all. The police captain talks to Stu and he says he doesn't have weapons. Witnesses say that he has a gun in his pocket. When Stu reaches for his pocket to show that he does not have a gun, he understands that if he continues, police officers will open fire on him. He says he didn't kill anyone. The captain asks who killed then and his voice forbids Stu to talk, so Stu says he doesn't know. The captain tries to find out who Stu is talking to and Stu says that his psychiatrist is at the other end of the wire. The captain tries to get into the trust of Stu, but Stu, at the request of a voice, asks the captain to step back 2 steps. At the same time, we see that special forces arrive nearby. The voice demands Stu to ask the captain if he satisfies his wife. After short attempts to refuse and threats from Stu's voice does it, calling his interlocutor crazy, and the captain notices it. The captain leaves. He tells the employees that he wants to know who Stu is talking to. The voice says that Stu has now become truly famous. He is shown on all New York channels. From the voice's monologue, we learn that Stu lied, saying that he knows celebrities and that he has connections. Stu tries to convince the voice to believe him and offers him his testimony that the man on the other side of the wire killed a man to save Stu. The voice says, "Do you think I'm crazy?" Stu's phone rings, and a voice asks him to pick up the phone. He says that Kelly is calling, and Stu should confess his sins, because it was because of them that he was in this situation. Stu sees his wife in the crowd and realizes that the man on the other end of the line is calling him, not his wife, and wants the police to kill Stu when he reaches for the phone. The voice admires Stu's insight. Kelly communicates with the captain after being given a loudspeaker, and she tries to talk to her husband. Stu says it's not his wife, it's just a cheap actress, and tells her to go home. The captain takes her away and asks if everything is all right in their relationship. The wife replies that everything is fine and everything was fine in the morning. The voice talks about Kelly and hints that he might kill her. In the frame we see that he is aiming at her. He says that his line is encrypted and that it will take half an hour for the police to realize that the call is coming from Philadelphia. The police inform the captain that it is impossible to trace the number, and he realizes that something is wrong here. The voice says he wasn't going to kill Stu's wife, but it looks like he's going to have to do it anyway. Stu asks him not to. The voice tells him to confess his infidelity to his wife, and then he will let them go. Stu does it, but the voice won't let him go. Stu hangs up and walks out of the booth with his hands up. Panic sets in, and Kelly runs to him. Stu notices the tip of a laser sight on her head and shouts at her to step back. The captain asks the police not to shoot, and the phone rings again. The captain lets Stu pick up the phone. The captain says to check all the windows facing the booth for the presence of a sniper. Stu tells the attacker that he will be exposed anyway because Stu doesn't have a gun. The voice asks Stu to go upstairs, and Stu sees a gun lying on the shelf of a phone booth. The voice informs him of his whereabouts and suggests that Stu kill him. Stu sees Pam, and the shooter notices her too. The voice says it will kill her if Stu doesn't take the gun. Stu reaches for the gun but doesn't, leaves his fingerprints on it. The voice suggests to Stu to choose who will die, Kelly or Pam. Stu sits on his lap and gently dials his wife's number. She hands the phone to the captain, who, listening to Stu, who is talking to an unknown person, is convinced of the correctness of his theory. He learns that an unknown person called Kelly's wife and asks her to check all incoming calls to her number, hoping that the attacker made a mistake and used an unencrypted line for the call. He asks Kelly to get in the car and take the capture team to the next street. The captain is trying to stall for time while the police and snipers inspect the windows. He started a heart-to-heart conversation with Stu. Stu says he can't talk to the captain and asks him to step back. He also says he will never leave this booth. The captain continues to talk to Stu, and Stu says that he is falling into the abyss, and also informs the captain that he too may die, after which the captain leaves. The voice says that the performance is over, and demands that Stu take a gun and shoot himself. Stu says he'd rather die than put a gun to his temple. The voice calls Stu to repent in front of the crowd and the cameras. Stu says he's never done anything for people who weren't useful to him. He admits that he lies to everyone and always. He says he's fake and repents to Pam and Kelly. At this time, the police find out that the call to Kelly's phone was made from a hotel room nearby. The captain orders to enter the hotel from another street and block all entrances and exits. The captain gives Stu a sign that they found him. Stu informs with his voice that he has been found and is already following him. The shooter decides to take someone with him and decides that it will be Kelly. Then Stu jumps out of the booth, grabs a gun and asks to kill him. "Kill me," he shouts. And they shoot at him. Stu falls to the ground. The attacker was found dead in his hotel room. He cut his throat. Stu was shot by a rubber bullet. He survived. He tells Kelly that they have a lot to talk about. At this time, the corpse of an uninvited guest is carried past them. Stu says he wants to see it. It turns out to be the pizza delivery guy from the beginning of the movie. The captain says that Stu did a great job, and if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have been able to catch the shooter. Stu is receiving medical care. He is lying in an ambulance, the doors of which are open, under the influence of a sedative, and a real attacker approaches him and says that he hopes that his honesty will remain in place, otherwise he will make himself felt.